yourself with this and everything, put that on there, turn off the gas, okay? Do not lift the cover up to see how you did, all right? Because then you didn't do very well. Leave it on there, okay? If you can, move it off, let it cool down so that it doesn't reignite, okay? The other thing you could do is put baking soda on it. A lot of you might have baking soda in your home already. It's the same chemical that's inside of a fire extinguisher. Okay, it's actually a little safer to use than a fire extinguisher. So if you have that nearby, all right, you never want to keep it up above the stove because if there's a fire, you might not be able to get to it, off on the side, on the counter. Even the one that might be in the refrigerator is going to work, okay, as long as it doesn't harden. All right. You have the glove that's already nearby. You grab that, open it up, sprinkle it across the top. It forms a layer, it cuts off the oxygen, and the fire goes out. Okay? There's a couple of things that you should never put it out with. What would be the thing that we would never put out a grease fire with? Water. Good answer. Never ever be tempted to do that. Too many people think firemen put it out with water, so I'm going to go get a cup of water and I'm going to throw it on there. Well, guess what? You're going to have a really, really big fire if you do that, because the water just boils instantly from the hot oil. It explodes and it throws the oil everywhere, all over your kitchen. So now not only do you have a little fire in there, you have a whole kitchen fire, and then you got a big problem. Don't also pick it up and run over to the sink and throw it in the sink like many people have done in the past. Okay? So those are important things as far as grease fires go. Make sure everything's pushed back away from your stove. Keep it clear of everything. If you have children, keep the children away from you while you're cooking. And also, especially wintertime, have tight-fitting clothing. Like the scarf around your neck is not a good idea while you're cooking. Things that are hanging and loose all have caused fires amongst people. Okay? You reach for the back burner, you forget what's hanging, and it's hanging over the front burner. The next thing is you're on fire. So make sure everything is tight-fitting clothing, not open jackets, things like that. All right? That's important. Because like I said, this is the biggest amount of fires we get, all because of kitchen fires. All right? The other thing we get a large amount of calls is because of electrical fires. A lot of the buildings in New York City are very old. The wiring could be inferior that are in the buildings because they're so old. So you have to be real careful with what you're plugging in. Anything that's in your house that's making something hot, making something cold. Right? Almost everything in your kitchen does one or the other. Okay? As well as space heaters, air conditioners, that goes for your refrigerator, your microwave, your toaster oven, coffee pot, hair dryers, curling irons, all those things. Making hot or making cold should always be plugged into the wall. All right? Directly into the wall. No extension cords. All of those things use a lot of power. You don't want to chance using an inferior cord that is not capable of carrying that. Okay? So if you go by that rule, plug those things directly into the wall, you'll be a lot safer. Okay? The other thing that people turn to is power strips, because this is great, because now all of a sudden I have 6 outlets here. This is fantastic. But you certainly don't want to put this on your counter. First of all, it is an extension cord. Okay? The other thing is it all goes back to one plug. So if you would put this in your kitchen, plug in your microwave, your toaster oven, your coffee pot, your blender, and everything else, all right? You're asking for trouble. You don't want to do that. Don't put yourself in that danger. These things are great for TV setups, for the DVD and the Xbox game and the cable box. That's all fine. They don't use a lot of power. Or also behind a computer for all the peripherals that go with a computer. Fine, okay? These are great. But don't ever use them in your kitchen, okay? What you also got to be aware of is, let's say you're going to go home tonight and all of a sudden you got to plug something in, real important. I got to get this plugged in right now. It's probably going to use a lot of power. I'm going to go get an extension cord. I can't reach where I want. So you go in the closet, you got 2 cords, okay? Now remember, it's going to use a lot of power. You're thinking this is a strong item. I better use the good cord. So which of these cords should I use?
The red one.
This one, right? Everybody likes this one, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, guess what? Not the right answer. Okay, it's very easy to think that this is better, right? This is a lot more expensive. This is a little 99-cent cheapy cord, right? Inside of these 2 cords is the exact same copper wire.
No.
All right. This just is thicker. It has insulation around it. It's going to last a lot longer. If you're a contractor dragging it all over the house working, it's going to last a lot longer. But it does not carry more power. All right. So you'd be deceived. And once you take this sleeve off of here, which who keeps it? All right. Who knows what's inside this wire? Okay. You don't know what's in the cord. Don't be fooled. If you have to plug in something that you really feel is going to use a lot of power, okay, so it's like an air conditioner, something like that you know is going to use a lot of power. If you have to, the best thing is to get an electrician to move the outlet closer to the window where you really want it, Or if that's not possible, at least go to, say, a Home Depot and buy the proper cord. All right, the cords will be a lot. It'll be the inside of this is a 16 gauge wire. It's very skinny. You'd have to get like a 14 gauge or a 12 gauge. All right, the numbers get smaller, the wire gets bigger. All right, so don't be fooled just because this is a big thick cord and it costs more than this. All right, very important to know that. Okay, now be careful with candles. If you use candles in your home, okay, you're starting a fire. Don't leave them in rooms that you're not in. Okay, we just had in where was I today? In Brooklyn. Just today in Brooklyn, it happened about 3 days ago that someone died because of a candle. All right, their clothes caught on fire, and it didn't go out. They eventually got brought to the hospital, and unfortunately they passed away, and it was all because of a candle. Now, candles are okay, but you got to be really careful with them. Don't leave them in other rooms. All right, don't have them around by children. If you have pets, be real careful that they don't get knocked over. More importantly is keep them in the room that you're in. So at least if something happens, don't put them on a pile of newspapers, all right, or on a table where there's a tablecloth. Sometimes the wick starts to spark. It can cause a fire, all right? These are all things that we see. The other important thing, too, with children, don't leave matches and lighters around. All right, it's too easy to just light something. If you need matches to light the stove, it's too easy to just put them on the counter or keep them in the drawer. The thing is, when we go to schools, that's pretty much what we teach kids. Don't play with matches and lighters. So if you give them that opportunity to play with them, they're going to take the opportunity, okay? And they're going to disappear. They're not going to play with them in front of you. They're going to go in the bedroom. And a lot of times, and we've seen this happen too often, they go in the bedroom because, wow, I'm going to go do this and find out what it is that I can't play with these. And they light a match and it scares the heck out of them. And they drop the match, okay, because it scared them. Now all of a sudden the carpet's burning, now they're more scared, now they hide in the closet or they hide under the bed because they're afraid to come tell you that something's wrong, and the story just gets worse and worse and worse, okay? Don't let it happen to you. Keep them up high, keep them out of sight, out of reach of children. Very, very important, okay? I'm going to end there as far as preventing fires, okay? But there's two other things that are very, very important to speak about, and that's having a plan of what you're going to do in the event of a fire, all right? You want to know and practice with your family. Everybody has gone to school and did fire drills in school, right? Mm-hmm. Has anybody ever done a fire drill at their home? Not too often, all right? But how often do you hear of schools having a fire? They don't happen, okay? They happen in homes. Go home, talk to your family, figure out what are we doing if there's ever a fire in our home, right? Hopefully you have at least 2 ways out of your house, okay, or apartment or wherever you live, okay? Most places will have 2. The only time you really shouldn't have 2 is if you live in a high-rise building. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you live in a high-rise building, you probably don't have 2, unless you have a balcony of some sort. All right, but that's where I'm going to talk about 2 different kinds of buildings. There's fire-proof buildings, and there's non-fireproof buildings. Every building's going to fall under one of those 2 headings. All right, a fireproof building is a very tall building, above 6 stories. No fire escapes, any of these high-rise apartment buildings. All right, those are what's called a fireproof building. Everything else is non-fireproof. So if you live in a private house, that's non-fireproof. If you live in along like a main street where there's stores and 2 levels of apartments above, non-fireproof. Or up to a 6-story apartment building that will have fire escapes on it, non-fireproof. All right, so here's the difference. How many people think they live in a fireproof building? Okay, just you. You're in, huh? Okay, so I'm going to talk to just you for now, unless anyone else lives in a fireproof building. A fireproof building, if there's a fire in your apartment, obviously you leave. Okay? If there's a fire in anyone else's apartment, you can stay in your apartment. The whole building is made out of concrete and steel. Everybody's apartment is a compartment of concrete. The fire cannot spread from one apartment into the next. Okay? So you're safer to stay where you are, as opposed to trying to leave because you think your building's burning. The building isn't really burning. What's burning is the contents of that person's apartment. Now, hopefully that person, when they have the fire, they leave the apartment. If you ever have a fire, close the door behind you. Okay, the last couple of bad fires we've had in New York City all resulted as people had a fire. Well, that's bad enough, but then they left the door open to their apartment, and it now involved everybody. okay? Which especially the one that happened in the Bronx with the 12 people. That's where that originated, but there's been other ones also. Please close the door behind you regardless, but in your case, stay in your apartment, okay? The fire will not come into your apartment. If there's any smoke that might seep into the door, if it happens to be on your floor, you can put a towel at the door, okay? Yes, and just move away from the door and go on the other side of the apartment, maybe open a window if you really feel like there's a little bit of smoke. But it's generally gonna be the best thing, it's always gonna be the best thing is to stay in your apartment, okay? You don't wanna leave because what happens is if the person has a fire, they leave the door open. Now the fire, instead of being only in their apartment, all the smoke and hot gases are in the hallway. Well, at the end of the hallway, there's a door to the stairwell, right? Well, if you live above the fire, and you say, oh, I gotta leave, there's a fire in my building. Now you're coming down the stairs. It's nice and safe and clear and everything else, and all of a sudden, someone opens up that door on the fire floor to the stairwell. Now you're in a chimney, and now you're trapped, and people have died when they should have stayed in their apartment. So you can stay in your apartment, providing it's not in your apartment. Apparently, everybody else lives in a non-fireproof building, right? That means you have fire escapes on your building, okay? Or you live in a private house that might only have, you know, an upstairs, a main floor, and a basement, or whatever. Everybody else, non-fireproof building, there's a fire anywhere in your building, you have to leave. Okay, the building is made out of wood. Don't be fooled by the outside because there's bricks on the outside. Okay, it's not a brick building. It's a wooden building that's just, the facade is bricked. You have to leave. Whether you're on the 5th floor and the fire's on the 2nd floor, it doesn't matter. The fire can spread just like happened in that one fire where 12 people died. Okay? You have to leave immediately. If you can't get down through the interior stairs, then go onto the fire escape. Make sure you know how to open your fire escape window. Too often people block it with furniture. They block it with bicycles. Okay? Then all of a sudden, if there's a hot, smoky fire, or they might, sometimes people will padlock it because it attaches to the fire escape. So now, but they hang the key on the wall, and all of a sudden during the fire, you can't find that key. Now you're trapping yourself into your own apartment. Don't do that, okay? Make sure you can get out. Make sure the window opens, that you know how to get it open. Don't put anything in front. Make sure you know how to use the fire escape. Very, very important, okay? So everybody understand. Now the best thing to do is to have a meeting place, okay? Especially people in a non-fireproof building. However you leave your house, everybody might leave in a different way. Have a spot outside your house, a meeting place that everybody knows to go to. You can pick a tree, a mailbox, a fence, a lamppost, whatever it is that's near your house that everybody in your family knows if there's ever an emergency, we're leaving, we're going to that place, and that's where we're going to call 911 from. The reason we really find that important is too often what happens is people leave through different ways through their home. Now, if you go out the front door, all right, and someone else goes out the back door of the house, and you don't find one another, what's dad tempted to do when this little boy or little girl is missing? All right, they're going to go back in looking for their child, or their wife, or their grandmother, whoever it is that's not there. They're going to go back in and try to find them, okay? And too often it happens that that person goes back in. By the time you go back into that burning building 2 minutes later, the fire has intensified 2 times, 3 times, 4 times as big as it was when you left. Okay? And people have died that have gone back into burning building looking for somebody. And meanwhile, they were in the backyard. They were on the side street. All right? They didn't know to have a spot. Go to that lamppost or whatever it is for your family, and that's what's important, to make sure everybody goes to that. All right? So everybody understand that? Yeah. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about is smoke alarms. Most important thing you can have in your home to keep you alive. Okay? Make sure you have a working smoke alarm. If you live in a private dwelling or any place where it has more than 1 floor, you should have at least one on every floor of your home. Okay? Make sure you change the batteries in. Twice a year you change the batteries. Daylight savings time in the spring is your reminder to change the battery. Daylight savings time in the fall is your reminder to change the battery again. Okay? Smoke alarms only lasted about 7 years. So if you've lived there for 30 and you never changed your smoke alarms, it's time to get new smoke alarms. Okay? If you look up at the ceiling tonight and see the way these are white, they don't make them any other color but white. All right? If you look up on your ceiling tonight and you lived there for 30 years and you look up and you say, wow, it's kind of brown or yellow looking, it's been there way too long. Okay? It's not going to work if you really need it. Now, you might press the button and it tests fine. Don't trust it. It's not going to work if it really needs to. okay? The other thing you should also have is a carbon monoxide alarm. Carbon monoxide is a poisonous gas. None of us in this room are capable of smelling it, tasting it, seeing it. We don't know it's in a room, only this does. Very, very important because it robs your body of oxygen, it works very quickly, you get flu-like symptoms very, very quickly, and then you pass out, and the story gets worse and worse and worse, okay? And it happens too often, all right? Have one in every level of your home, okay? Now, the other thing that you can do, if you need a new smoke alarm, or you need more smoke alarms, or maybe yours are old or whatever, they make new ones now that look somewhat like this, and some of them this way, some of them might tend to look more like this. This is a combination alarm. It does two things. It does both smoke and carbon monoxide. Okay? It's two objects in one. The best thing about it, though, is it does not work on a battery or a battery that's replaceable. The battery is built into this. It's got a 10-year lithium battery. Okay? You don't have to change 9-volt batteries. Okay? The law changed in 2014 that these are the type that you have to replace. If you buy a new one, you have to replace it with this. If someone's building new construction, they have to use the 10-year lithium battery ones, okay? Now, the last thing to talk about, if you have one of these, anybody have a combination unit in their home? Okay, they're really good, okay? If you went to, say, a hardware store or a Home Depot or a Target or whatever, they're going to carry them like this, okay? The important thing to know is which alarm is going off when this thing makes a noise, okay? Because at 3 o'clock in the morning, you hear this thing beeping, all right? You look up at the ceiling and go, oh my gosh, my smoke alarm's going off. Or is my carbon monoxide alarm going off? It's the same item. It's going to make two distinct sounds, all right? You have to know which one it is, all right? Here's your smoke sound. It's going to do 3 slow beeps. Then it's going to do the other one. So here's smoke. That's what they're all going to sound like. Okay? Some will talk to you. Now you're going to hear the carbon monoxide sound, totally different. 4 fast beeps. Okay? So you hear the difference. All right? Now, if you wake up and there's 3 slow beeps going on, it's 3 in the morning. Maybe you have a couple of seconds to run around your house and say, what the heck's going on? Why is my smoke alarm going off? All right? If you hear 4 beeps, there's nothing to look for. You're not going to find anything. You can run around all day long. The problem is if this thing's detecting carbon monoxide, all right, that means it's in the environment that you're in your apartment, in your house. And the longer you stay in there looking for it, the more susceptible you are to passing out from it. So what you need to do is leave immediately. Go outside, call 911 immediately. Okay, so you hear 4 beeps, get everybody out of the house. We come in with a mask and a meter, and we can track down the source of the carbon monoxide. All right? As a regular human being, none of us are capable of finding it. Okay, so be really careful. Don't stay in that environment. Best thing to do, leave all the doors and the windows closed, so that at least when we get there, it's still present, and we can hopefully track down the cause of it. Okay? So make sure your smoke alarm is working. Yes?
The question about the carbon monoxide, at one level in a house is sugar because it's a heavy gas.
It does not matter. All right, it's a good question. Smoke alarms on the ceiling, nowhere else but on the ceiling. Yes, some people put them on the wall, okay? But if you put it on the wall right here, where does the smoke go? It goes up, right? Yes. It hits the ceiling first. It spreads the whole ceiling. If I have this thing 2 feet down, I need 2 feet of smoke on my entire ceiling in the whole room before this knows that there's smoke in the room. Okay? Put it on the ceiling. That's the best place for that. Carbon monoxide, anywhere you want to put it, doesn't matter. You can put it on the wall up here, you can put it on the wall. That's why if you go into a store, you can buy ones that plug into an outlet. You'll never see a smoke alarm that can plug in, because outlets are always about 2 feet off the ground. You can buy a carbon monoxide alarm and plug it in. You cannot buy a smoke alarm that will plug in because they never want you to put a smoke alarm down here. Okay, smoke alarms go up. This can go anywhere.
But
so
does that gas rise? Does it rise like a heat?
Carbon monoxide? No, carbon monoxide